that we're beginning the sculpting stage of our little turtle, and specifically the high resolution detailing of our mesh, we should look at some reference image to take us on a nice little process of discovery as to which types of sculptural details we want to infuse inside the model itself. As we look at both of these images, I think they do a really great job of establishing some patterns here that we should look to replicate and include inside of our details. We got this lovely guy over here munching on a blueberry, I think, which is pretty cool, and maybe some strawberries. And I'm seeing a common pattern on the front legs. If you look real closely right here and on our friend on this side, we have a whole series of pretty primary forms, these big dots and shapes that go up the leg. That's a pattern that seems pretty iconic for this turtle. This is a box turtle, by the way, a three-toed box turtle to be specific. So I definitely want to make sure that I start to replicate that detail in the sculpture that I'm about to create. In addition, if we start to examine the skin texture a little bit, we're starting to see that the turtle's skin texture is kind of unique. And in every sense, it kind of replicates what we're often seeing in other amphibians like crocodiles or maybe even an elephant. We've got this real rough textury pattern that's showing up in a lot of different locations. It's not as extreme on this one over here, but we can definitely start to see that is a consistent texture detail that we can sculpt inside of Blender. In addition, I also want to look at how the shell is going to be constructed, because this is going to be a major feature of the final finished sculpture itself. And if you look closely, we have two different rows of little cells, if you will. We have these small guys down over here, which creates the rim of the top side of the turtle. And then we also have these big cells in the center. You can see that on the other one as well. A whole bunch of small ones down at the rim, and then we have these big guys going down the back. Now, each one of these, even though they're the same type of turtle, have a slightly different shell pattern. And this is kind of why I chose a turtle, because we get to do kind of whatever we want. Our shells and our skin textures can look and behave however it is that we want. We get to truly make them unique. But there's a connection between these two shells. We need to have a theme that is then repeated over multiple items inside of the sculpture itself. If you look carefully on this turtle, we have kind of this right angle hatching pattern that's showing up inside of the detail. We don't necessarily see that hatching pattern as strongly as we do in the other one, but it has its own circular system here. And I kind of like that. It makes each one of the shells unique. If you look at the details down at the small ones, it's then replicated here at the top. We have a big square followed by a whole series of right angles. Here's the big square followed by a whole series of right angles just going in the opposite direction. That's a good little theme that I want to make sure is repeated on each one of these cells as I begin to sculpt it. So we have the dots in the front, the texture pattern for the skin, which is kind of like a crocodile or an elephant, real kind of rough, leathery almost. And then a really defined texture theme that's going to show up in the shell. These ideas come from our reference, and it's important that we have a real strong understanding of these ideas before we start looking to apply them to our sculptures over in Blender.